Children love the Amazing Digital Circus. If you know a child over the age of 8, chances are this is not new information. But what's the appeal? Why are kids trading in their mouse ears for jester hats? For those who hate when YouTubers stretch out a topic by talking about their grandma's cookies, here you go. First, we need to acknowledge that the Amazing Digital Circus is original content, which is great because so many cynics think that new ideas can't survive in 2026. We'll address how sequels are not risk-free, like how they often make less money than the originals. Next, we'll examine the advantages of having a creative leader. So many kids' movies have multiple directors and writers that its identity gets squashed. Then we look at different types of humor that the Amazing Digital Circus engages in. And I'd argue this is the most important feature, as the Amazing Digital Circus's humor is what gives it its broad appeal. Next, the Amazing Digital Circus cultivates a deeper following because it has this interesting, mysterious story. When shows have a mystery, there's often fan theory videos, and fan videos act as a sort of word-of-mouth advertisement that attracts even more people. And finally, the Amazing Digital Circus is available in its entirety for free on YouTube, meaning that kids don't need to beg their parents to get another subscription to view it. Anyone, anywhere can watch the entire series. For the rest of you, let's put on our mouse ears because we're looking at what Disney can learn from the Amazing Digital Circus. New characters and franchise. Disney loves its IP. It's what the studio was built on. And in the last 15 years, they've really increased their catalog with big purchases such as Fox, Star Wars, and Marvel. And while those are all valuable, well-established franchises, they do come with some baggage. Could be old fans with impossible expectations, or just the challenges of working within an established lore. But Disney doesn't really seem to mind, as their strategy for the future is a focus on sequels. And with the box office numbers they've been reaching, I understand. But there's two main things you gotta consider when it comes to sequels. One, what's popular today may not be appealing tomorrow. Indiana Jones is a good recent example. Indiana Jones was cool during simpler times when things were more black and white. But now the world is much more complex and younger people don't see the appeal. And then two, you can't have a Zootopia 2 without the first one. Meaning they have to continue creating new original content because they just never know what's gonna blow up. The Amazing Digital Circus proves that people, most specifically children, still have an appetite for new original content. That doesn't mean that Disney should just greenlight every project like 2010 Netflix. So let's continue exploring the Amazing Digital Circus success so Disney can create the right kind of content. Follow a vision. One common problem with kids' movies, even outside the realm of Disney, is the movie by committee process. Meaning a single film will have multiple directors, screenwriters, and even storytellers. Movies by committee usually produces some sort of final product that sort of appeals to everybody, but at the cost of its identity. But the Amazing Digital Circus isn't trying to appeal to everyone. Glitch approached Gooseworks because they wanted her unique lens. And boy did they get it. Kids flock to the Amazing Digital Circus because it's something they've never seen before. And that wouldn't be possible if Glitch didn't give Gooseworks the room to be herself. Looking at some recent Disney flops, a common complaint is how sterile they feel, which is often a quality in movies by committee because there's no lead visionary. Meaning Disney needs to loosen the reins and trust who's ever in charge so its projects can have a coherent vision. And a show could have a laser focus, but no one will watch it if it's boring. Which brings us to our next point. Humor and zaniness. People want to be entertained. And usually one of the easiest ways to accomplish that goal is through humor, which is why the Amazing Digital Circus is a comedy. Which really isn't that special, as the majority of kids' content are comedies. But the Amazing Digital Circus walks this fine line of being dark and edgy without being inappropriate. It's like somewhere in the middle between South Park and Shrek. And this opens up a lot of doors as audiences across multiple age groups can enjoy it. Kids will like the random nonsense, teens will enjoy the edgier jokes, and the young adults can appreciate some of the deeper meanings and emotional moments. And Disney films often fail to capture those older demographics. Now, Disney has sort of always suffered from this stigma being just for children, but this perception has only gotten worse as what kids find funny changes. And this isn't some old man yells at cloud moment. I fully recognize that the kids of today have their own style, culture, and humor. And I want Disney to recognize and respect that too. TikTok, memes, short-form content has changed the entertainment landscape, and the Amazing Digital Circus leans into that with non-sequiturs, over-the-top cartoon physical comedy, and just the overall chaotic nature of the show. I think for the Amazing Digital Circus, and for any kids show for that matter, humor is the cornerstone of success, so let's see what makes the Amazing Digital Circus so funny. Cartoon physics. First, it embraces its cartoony nature. From classic gags like eye popping out to limb stretching, cartoon physics increase Amazing Digital Circus's silliness, which is refreshing because you don't see too many 3D animated cartoons pull off this type of humor well. And that's a shame because the whole point of cartoons is that you can do anything. Some 3D movies are starting to incorporate more classic cartoony features like the exaggerated faces in K-pop Demon Hunters, but I've yet to see Disney really try it in their films. Non sequiturs. The Amazing Digital Circus is full of non sequiturs and randomness. And this is gonna be a big make it or break it moment for a lot of people. Some people think that they're dumb, but in this day and age of short form content, moments that can be funny without any context and independent from the story are what go viral. Sorry parents, I foresee a lot more random screaming in your future. Kane. Kane is sort of the embodiment of those first 2 points. He's either doing something cartoony or engaging in nonsense. And most kids shows have a Kane. They're usually loud, stupid, act as a comic foil. Think Gurr from Invader Zim, except imagine if he had all the control. Parents typically hate these characters, but kids go nuts for them as they're usually the funny ones. Sorry Disney, I don't make the rules. Jax. Jax is a very important character as he's the one that engages in your classic bully comedy where someone is the butt of either his verbal or physical assaults. He's sarcastic, he's apathetic, he's the character that gives a show that edge younger viewers love. To put this in executive talk, Disney needs a Bart Simpson. It's okay, I know Disney wants to avoid mean characters now, but they eventually get their comeuppance. Darkness and violence. A lot of the punchlines and themes of the Amazing Digital Circus can be dark, but it never crosses the inappropriate line. Sure, they swear, but it's censored, albeit lightly.
Did Kane just say ass?
And yeah, there is some violence, but minus the guns, it's the sort of violence you'd see in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Well, maybe even with the guns. And that ties into the cartoon style that the Amazing Digital Circus is trying to emulate. Maybe I'm desensitized, but nothing in this show seems really that bad. It's not squeaky clean, but Disney needs to realize that kids are watching Squid Game now. So the needle for what is inappropriate has shifted. Twists. And finally, the Amazing Digital Circus does a fantastic job at subverting expectations. You can never predict how an episode's plot or a joke will go. It is a great example of man carefully steps over banana peel only to fall down a hole on the other side. People love surprises, and Disney really hasn't had a good surprise since Frozen or Zootopia. And those are 10 plus years old at this time. Disney and Pixar will continue to underperform if they don't shake this predictability. And no show is less predictable than the Amazing Digital Circus. Interesting mystery. While humor is a great hook, shows and movies need to be interesting in order for them to have staying power. And the Amazing Digital Circus cultivates that through its many mysteries. Right from episode 1, we're dropped into this world with so many questions. Where are they? Is this real? How can they escape? And the Amazing Digital Circus never really gives solid answers. That may change with the movie, but knowing the Amazing Digital Circus and other Gooseworks cartoons, it's probably gonna have some silly end. But the unanswered questions only work in the show's favor. One, it lets the viewer fill in the blanks with their own imagination. And if any group has a big imagination, it's children. I personally used to get lost in the mysteries of Zelda's Majora's Mask. Are there any series from your childhood with unexplained mysteries that you like to obsess over? And 2, in the age of streaming, it increases engagement. And in 2026, this is the more important aspect. Because the Amazing Digital Circus has so many unanswered questions about the environment, character backstories, the whole point of the circus, it spawns thousands of fan theory videos. And the more people talk and make videos of something, the more that content gets pushed. Having an active, curious fan base theorizing only benefits the show. So Disney, there's no need to wrap everything up in a nice, pretty bow. And thanks to streaming, people love to crawl through a movie frame by frame, looking for little secrets and Easter eggs. A hidden narrative in the background would really help generate buzz and increase engagement. YouTube. Probably the aspect that helps the Amazing Digital Circus the most is just how accessible it is. In order to really watch any Disney show or movie, you need Disney Plus. That's always gonna limit who watches things, as the parents are the one who subscribe to streaming services. And parents and money being the gatekeepers of media isn't really anything new. But parents and money being the gatekeepers, that's not really anything new. There's always been kids with cable and without. The parents who wouldn't let their kids watch Scooby-Doo because of witchcraft, and then the kids who are watching Pulp Fiction at age 5. But the thing that has changed is that everyone has access to YouTube. Well, except those kids, but we're not gonna talk about them. The Amazing Digital Circus can reach so many people because so many people can reach it. Sure, Disney does have some full episodes of their TV shows on YouTube, but it's nothing substantial. Typically, each show will have like 1 or 2 videos on the official YouTube channel, but they're more like teasers to get you to subscribe to Disney Plus over a full experience like the Amazing Digital Circus. The only Disney-related content available on YouTube are educational videos and songs. Disney could make the funniest show with all the right character types and also add a fun mystery to solve, and no one will care if it's not accessible. Meaning the easier the content is to access, the bigger the potential fan base. Disney should really see how much they can gain from giving something away for free. I mean, this is Disney we're talking about. Indoctrinating children is their bread and butter, and the kids are on YouTube. These are the things that the Amazing Digital Circus really excels at. There are a few things I didn't go in depth over, like how it balances the wacky, crazy moments with a lot of tender ones, and just how each character represents different personality traits. Almost like a young adult version of the Seven Dwarves. As Bob Dylan sang, the times they are a-changin'. If Disney's goal is to keep capturing the hearts of children, they need to continue to release thoughtful, original content that is led by a competent creative that has proven they have a unique style, and let them have their freedom. It also needs to be funny and accessible. If Disney really studies the Amazing Digital Circus and isn't afraid to break their own mold, then they too can find this natural success. This is the Other Mouse, and I'll see you at the castle.